Welcome. Great to see all these folks here. I'm going to be having a seat here pretty soon, but thanks everybody for coming to our session. I feel like almost every room that we go to, especially when we're outside, it's like being amongst a group of your closest friends or somebody that's about to be your closest friend. I don't know, I can tell by a few nodding heads here. Isn't it feel that way the past few days? You know, this topic kind of started, Bob, with your interview at, how many show of hands, how many people are supernodes? Right, so great conversation. If you haven't listened to it on YouTube, there was a great conversation between Bob and Sarah Wang around this topic. I think the famous repeated thing that she said was, our best performing portfolio companies have partner-led strategies. Now, don't we all believe that? Absolutely. She said some other cool things, but basically, you know, how companies are now starting to actually evaluate some of the folks that they're looking at, and they put a higher value really on their indirect pipeline versus their direct pipeline. So I think we're going to settle ourselves into for one thing, look at me, how fortunate I am to have such an amazing panel here to get the best out of everything that those folks have to say. We made a decision when we were kind of preparing. We had some short calls to prepare for this, and we said, let's do really short bios. In fact, Kristine's going to do the bios, so they're very trusting of me, not knowing me that well. But I'm going to do it very quick because you have LinkedIn, you know many of these people, so let's just get on with it. All right, so Alison, as we know, is Executive Vice President, at Insight Partners. She's been there for a period of time. She's running their sales and their customer success organization. She's been doing this for a while. She's spent 20 years in the area of AI, ML, software, indirect and direct sales. She can talk about a wide variety of things. And also, for the 4 colleges that she is taking her son right now to evaluate, they have never been modeled and evaluated so hard as these schools that she's now evaluating for her son. All right, so then next we have Bob. You know him, you love him. He's 4 years into this little company called Crossbeam, and the 2 he was at before that, I think they're Talon and RJ Metrics, both acquired. I don't know what that tells us about Crossbeam, but you're kind of the acquirer now, right? The thing he doesn't tell everybody is he is an expert in the area of improv. Has done over 100 shows in the Philly, New York area, probably right up kind of until the pandemic. I don't know, but I'm hearing something about there might be some improv done on the yacht tonight. So I'm just saying, a couple rum drinks, who knows. And Liz is at stage 2. She's been there for a while. She is a partner and a go-to-market advisor. And she's been advising boards and companies for quite some period of time. She was at NetSuite before that. And she's got an interesting story. Like several people, she got a pandemic puppy. And that puppy is, interestingly, named Bear. And as she calls it, her shadow. He's so popular on the Zoom calls, he is now listed on one of her company's website as an advisor. So there we go. All right, so yeah, we've talked about this a lot. It's really, I don't like to use that term perfect storm, but man, this is it, right? Pandemic, war, socioeconomic, cutbacks, you name it, stock, company devaluations, stock prices, all of it. I think we, and I hope pretty much all of you, see this actually as a perfect opportunity. This is the time for us to be able to separate our businesses as a company. This is a time for not only growth, but I think, competitive advantage. And so we're going to try to talk about a lot of those things. I mean, I think that we're, reaching an environment where, people have a realization of the importance of partnering. And so that's kind of what we're gonna get at today. All right, so a quick show of hands. From an investment in your company's partnering strategy, that can be your initiatives, your headcount, any resources into the partner space, how many, you get 3 choices, right? This is kind of the obvious. Increase, decrease, or you're keeping it pretty flat. So let's start with flat. How many people are kind of flat in their investment in their partnering area? Okay. How many have decreased their investment into the partner area?
They didn't come to this event.
I like this. And, this is what we want to see. Okay, so well, you know what this leaves. How many have actually increased for this next 6 to 12 months?
Wow.
Yay! Love that. All right, we're done here. Let's just go. All right, so that's what we'd like to see, and I think we're all on the same page here. So let's start getting into our questions. All right, now we've got 4 questions. I personally think they're all very good questions, and we may not get to them all because we want to leave some Q&A time for you guys as well. And I don't know if we're going to have like a microphone that's going to be sitting out there at some point for people to ask questions. But if not, we're just going to toss you out maybe one of ours, and then we'll share. All right, so the first question that I want to talk to you guys about, and you've seen these questions a bit in advance, but how are investors, looking at partnering initiatives today? What kind of advice are they giving to their boards and their company executives? And are you seeing this, and are you presenting it as an attorney, as an opportunity, excuse me? I'll start out there.
Happy to start. So I do think there's kind of 2 sides to this coin.
Right.
I think traditionally you'll find a lot of VCs telling people in the early stages of a business that partnerships can be a distraction. And I do think that there are plenty of companies where that's the case, and it can feel like it pulls resources if it's done too early, and you don't actually get like the feedback loop you need if you're not managing it well. But I think the vast majority of companies actually can lean into a partner strategy earlier. And I'll share an example of a company that I'm working really closely with, Occupier, in the commercial real estate space. They sell lease administration to real estate teams, and then they also work with brokers. And when I invested in that deal last year, I think one of the biggest pulls to me was this concept of network effects between the 2 sides. And it started as they could sell to a broker as a client. But then pretty quickly what we were seeing is that broker became like a node for them. They exposed their product to other clients, and then clients exposed it to other brokers. And this like lean-in effect became so like paramount to how their business was being built. And it's early days. Like we have not even seen what this can become. And we're thinking through now strategies of like how to enable that network. Should we actually just give the broker product away as like a loss leader? Can they actually be our biggest lead gen strategy? So, not to give away the end game, but that's like some of the things we're thinking through. And so I do think, when we find and see a company where there's a really natural fit with a partner ecosystem, I'm leaning in super hard. I think it's really exciting.
All right, so Bob, you kind of come at it obviously from a different point of view, although you did work at an investor for a while before your 2 companies that you founded, so you know that point of view quite well as from hearing it from your investment companies. But what would be kind of your response there, and what you're hearing and what you think yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting looking at this, because we at Crossbeam, we get a little bit of a meta take on this, because we are obviously helping enable companies to create these ROI stories around investment in partner organizations. We ourselves have a partner organization. We have raised money from venture firms that are very kind of forward-thinking on the partner side, and I previously worked at a venture firm that was actually Insight Partners, so we go back a long way here. The interesting thing that I think is very, very key to this entire conversation is that partnerships, in order to be viewed in a framework of ROI and growth and efficient, profitable growth for companies, needs to break out of being a siloed kind of piece of the organizational structure. Partnerships is an enabling layer. And if you look at whether it's stuff we're doing at Crossbeam or just general best practices playbooks, what you see is that a partner ecosystem in its fully realized state ultimately becomes a force multiplier for all of the other organizational functions up and down the go-to-market funnel. So whether it's marketing through your partner ecosystem and co-marketing motions, it's co-selling, it's on the customer success and value add and driving net retention layer. Across the board, getting to a state where you can build a partner ecosystem that is kind of yielding things that can be consumed and leveraged and pushed forward by those teams, then you can start to really clearly connect the dots between why investment there becomes very, very, very scalable, very justified, very profitable. When we talk about the perfect storm component and the macro economy, what ends up becoming super kind of crystallized as you think through it is what are the other places that, not just the partnerships team, but those other teams, the marketers, the sellers, the customer success people can actually put their dollars and invest? And the answer is, you look at what's been dominant over the last decade or so, and what do you have? You have outbound selling, which, like, look, when Predictable Revenue by Aaron Ross came out 10 or 12 years ago, running that playbook and hiring SDRs and going outbound was this incredibly differentiated strategy where if 10%, 20% of the market is doing it, they get this disproportionate yield out of that strategy. But people's inboxes are a zero-sum game. Their attention spans have a finite amount of time, and more emails just dilutes the amount of energy. When 90% of the market is running outbound sales campaigns with cold outreach from SDRs, you get this dilutive effect where it actually becomes less effective and more expensive. Where else can people put money? Ads. What's happening to ads? The death of the cookie. GDPR, CCPA. You've got a huge universe of folks like Apple, right, that are suppressing the ability to do direct tracking. That means that there's less ad inventory. It means the inventory that's there is less precise, so you're spending more, it's less effective. You could go on and on, right, around like how the previous generations of the enabling technologies and data sources for go-to-market teams are actually really becoming less economically, logically profitable on a marginal basis to make investments in. And then you turn your attention back to ecosystems, and it gets really, really exciting. Because what are ecosystems? They're none of the things that I just described as being bad about those other pieces, right? They are extremely proprietary to your company. Like the leads you get, the ways you advance deals, they are specific to you because they are coming from the businesses you are partnered with. Who you're partnered with is specific to your business model, your ideal customer profile. It's this beautiful synergy. So what you really need to do is just unlock the connective tissue between those pieces. And when you think about a market where valuations are coming down, focus on profitability and efficiency is going up, it starts to become very, very clear why the smart investors and the smart companies are actually moving investment allocation over to these ecosystem strategies, but only in the world where you can make the case that you connect that back over to the sellers, to the marketers, to the go-to-market teams, rather than just a siloed partner investment. Yeah.
You mentioned something to me. I think you call it the Trinity of Truth. Right?
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, like scalable.
Oh yeah, scalable, profitable.
Your Trinity is scalable, measurable, and economically
efficient. Yeah. I think that's right. It's like with a lot of these things, it's like it can get big, right? Like you can scale it. It can be economically efficient. You can do it in a marginally profitable way, and it's like actually measurable, right? Where you can point to it and tell an ROI story. And with a lot of these channels, it's like we want these three things. Pick two. Right? Like it's very, very rare that you can get all three. And I think ecosystems and investments in partnership are kind of fairly unique in that they check the three boxes.
I like that one because you can remember it. Us marketing folks, we kind of get into that. So, Alison, please.
So I'm going to give you a view as far as how we look at things when we evaluate companies, and especially as far as what we're then espousing some recommendations after we're doing any diligence or any go-to-market maturity review with them. Usually what we're looking at is we look at go-to-market very much as a holistic thing. It's marketing, sales, and customer success. So because partners actually do a lot of things, right? It's not only generating the leads, it's helping with the win rates and the ASPs, as well as the retention, the renewals, and the ability to expand. So an example is like some of our portfolio companies, we actually went during a customer success 360 with them, which is essentially an evaluation of their capability to retain and expand. We asked them to break out what they have with regards to direct and partner sales, and we often find that partner-led deals actually have better retention, better expansion than actually direct, and it's because of the relationship that those partners will typically have in the value delivery. So every company is different when we're evaluating, because it may be where you're truly SaaS and you're just about the value you deliver in your product, which is a very different thing, and in that if it has strong ecosystem placement, then ecosystem becomes the way to go, right? In addition to that, if you have it's really important around value delivery and you need partners to unlock revenue and value for your customers, and you also are in a strong ecosystem, we will look for ecosystem and how are you connecting to secondary, tertiary partners within the ecosystem. So a lot of times we're looking for the focus that the companies are having in their partner strategy, and then how deep are they leveraging their ecosystem and the partners. But every company is different. Not everyone has strong ecosystem. Not everyone has needs strong value delivery. So it really varies. And so what we're measuring and what we recommend is it's just very dependent on their business.
Excellent answer. It almost leads into a segue into our second question is, I know that Liz, you and I spoke that sometimes you look at, it's not about, and this has been talked about in other sessions, and I think many people realize it, we all want to have a lot of partners, but we want to have a lot of good partners, and we want to have a lot of good engaged partners, right? So what we were sharing was sometimes you want to do a measurement on not how many partners you've signed, maybe not even many unique integrations that you've accomplished, although that one has required more investment from both sides. But like, where are you at in the onboarding and the actual enablement, which actually makes them, and they have to put significant effort into doing that process to get them further in that partner journey with us, and just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, like as a tech community, we've become really accepting of this concept of North Star metrics, and particularly around customer onboarding, that there are like aha moments, and if you can get somebody over some certain level of activation or engagement hump, they're like a really good customer forever, long time. And I think the same thing happens in partnerships, and we don't often talk about it the same way. I feel like more often than not, when I talk to a partnerships team or to a company, what I hear is like metrics around how many new partners they're signing and what their strategy is for the year, and we're going to exit the year with 150, 3,000. It doesn't really matter. Like, these are orders of magnitude, but the problem is the same. And I think instead, what I'd love to see people talking about is like what it actually takes to make a partner successful. And is that, if they do a deal with you in the first 60 days that they're signed up, they're more likely to bring their next 5. Or is it if they go through your onboarding class in person, or if they, have ties to 3 people on your sales team, what is the thing that makes them feel connected to you, that more deals are coming your way, or that they feel like a tie to your company and are actually activated? So I think about first that onboarding concept. It's not just like how are you actually onboarding and enabling them, but what are you doing to make sure that they're successful? Sometimes that's giving them leads. Sometimes, and obviously there's lots of different kinds of partnerships out there. But I think those are just a couple examples of things I think about. And then on the back end too, thinking about what the retention of those partners is over time. And if you see them slipping off of whatever the plateau of activity is, what are you doing to re-engage them? So I love to see the KPIs and metrics balance both, quantity and quality, and thinking about how you actually keep that group activated over time rather than just pouring money or time or resources into that top of funnel and bringing new ones on.
It's important to do that, and it's important to continue to do it through even after partners have been on board for a while, because we know, and I know some folks that are involved in the partner enablement space, that know you don't want to just teach and enable our partners on the front end, and then when we get further along and we're now, we've done account mapping and we're starting to co-market and co-sell, and they're like, yeah, I think I went through that content about 4 months ago. How exactly did I do that again? So there's that constant kind of almost just-in-time type of, at the appropriate time, giving them other bits and feeds, maybe of the previous content, maybe of new stuff. Before I go in, because you guys both know, I want to go into that customer acquisition or avoiding churn with the current customers one, but any other thoughts from you guys on kind of the KPIs and metrics that you guys are looking for specifically?
So again, this depends on the business,
Yeah.
right? So I know that some folks have been talking a little bit so far about partner source versus partner influence. That is big for us to understand what you're driving with regards to influence and more alliances and that level, or even in the SI space. But I would say, like, and this is where the topic is perfect storm, right? So where we are, and We're doing enough cost of sales analysis these days, and we are looking at the overlays, right? So it's starting to really generate a lot of conversation about are the comp models the right comp models based on what you're trying to influence with regards to revenue acceleration and revenue growth. And by looking at that, that's when we start to look at, okay, looking at the life cycle of where the partners are really influencing your growth, not just from land all the way to, time to revenue. Are you positioning the right partnerships? Are you actually comping your team, incenting the team the right way? Is there gaming going on? So we are starting to look at that, which isn't something that you would think for an investment company who's been mostly positioned around growth, right? But times are important about optimal growth and being really responsible with how we're growing, because we don't want our companies to be in a position where they hire a bunch and then they have to lay them off, like within a few months or a year. So that's one of the reasons we're really looking at the right KPIs, and is it actually aligned to the right incentives?
Just very briefly, I'd say, so first of all, I completely agree with everything both of you have said on that point, and nothing to add there. I think there's just one truth that I think everyone in this room would probably agree with, which is just categorically partnerships as a piece of the org chart has a data problem that is a bigger and more complicated problem than any of the counterparts in sales, marketing, customer success, et cetera. And it stems from a very simple truth, which is at any given time, you as a partnership leader only have half of the data that you actually need to make decisions, right? Like sales can have the CRM data in a silo, the marketing automation data in a silo. You're in the business of drawing Venn diagrams between your data and a data set that you have no access to and no control over. And right, and if I throw in one Crossbeam plug in the midst of this whole thing, right, the core vision behind our company is to kind of allow you to facilitate drawing those Venn diagrams and taking action beyond it. But the hope for the bigger unlock there is that what it does is creates this data layer which has never existed before that then puts partnerships on equal footing to do things like attribution analysis, ROI analysis, tying these partner motions and actions closer to the data. And the debates around partner source versus partner influence are great and valid and will go on for some time. But at least we're at the table. At least we have the data that we can actually have the same arguments about multi-touch versus single-touch versus source versus influence that marketing has had for 15 years now, since the birth of the marketing automation platform. And this is a revolution in terms of the technology that the folks in the partnership universe now have. Now you get to solve the next set of problems, right? Which is how do we actually go about the attribution side? And that's what a whole lot of us are working on here, including us.
All right, well, I'm going to take us in so everybody start thinking. Guys, because I'm going to move over to that, but I'm going to give them just a quick answer on, because I know what they are, because I've already asked them, how you guys view new customer acquisition versus keeping our current customers and, avoiding churn and getting that retention and making sure they're sticking with us. And I will start with you.
So just so I understand your question totally, Kristine.
If you only have a certain amount of money to invest, let's just say we got some challenging times. I mean, obviously we like to do both things. If you had to prioritize, and let's say we don't have to quit doing one of them, it's not zero sum, but if you were to put a priority towards which one, the growth versus the maintaining of the base?
It's both, but yes, it's both. It's just getting smarter. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but it's about getting smarter about how you do your customer acquisition.
How you spend that money.
And
And I kind of know how but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah,
I'm looking at you. Yeah.
Here's what I'll say, which is Snowflake released their earnings earlier this week, and it was one of the most blockbuster, lights-out, amazing quarters of any software company that's ever been seen in the history of technology. We have a perfect storm. Valuations are contracting. Snowflake doesn't trade at the multiples that it did a year and a half ago. However, there are software companies out there kicking ass and having the greatest quarters of their histories. This is different than 2008. This is different than 2001, where there was kind of this macro compressionary effect that was dragging down the whole sector. So the question is, if there are any companies out there that are doing that well, what is going on inside of those companies? And I will say one thing that Snowflake is truly exceptional on is net revenue retention. And I think that there's a part of that story that if that piece wasn't there, I think would put them in a completely different category in terms of the way people are interpreting these results coming out. So I totally agree. It's unquestionably both. It has to be. But especially when you get into ecosystems, especially when you get into worlds where network effects are at play, a really cool side effect of investing in net revenue retention is that it definitionally accrues value at the top of your funnel as well. And Snowflake's a great example, right? They have network effects in through their marketplace and through their ecosystem play, network effects in the adoption of their product. So if you're forcing an answer, I think the net revenue retention, if you've got that model down, is a good one.
You said it's a bad sign if you're losing customers, not just in what potentially be the product. Are we not doing the right kind of customer service support? Is the partner that they're utilizing that solution, is there a mistake? So things that have to be analyzed.
If it's a good customer, right? I mean, if you're losing bad customers, that's not a bad thing.
That's not a bad thing.
You need to refine your ICP and your IPP. In that situation.
Yeah, I'm glad you went there because I think in the earliest stages of a business, one of the things we struggle with is you close anything that comes in the door because you need to start having customers and learn from them. You need revenue. But very quickly, it is figuring out who should you be selling to, who's going to grow with you, and so much time is spent trying to save customers that just shouldn't be your customer. And so if I think about really what that question comes down to in the very early stages of the business, sub $1 million in ARR, I'd rather see people just let go of the non-ICP customers fast.
That partner that was just not providing their side to whatever that total solution ended up being for that customer as well, we can spot them.
Totally. And I guess where I was going to flip that is I think what you'll find, to your kind of original point, Alison, is a lot of the customers that come through your partner channels are going to be more obviously in your ICP. You're going to see that you already have had success with that partner, success with that type of customer. And so leaning into that channel in a challenging time where you're, probably churning some customers out, you're thinking about what growth to lean into, partnerships makes a lot of sense.
All right, I've got a short amount of time. Does anyone like to step up to the microphone? I know how people love to step up to microphones. If you don't want to and you just want to shout out a question, I'm cool with that too. Oh, Potter, I need to.
I'm going to ask a question, Kristine, right? Yeah. Hi, Brother Hamdan with Tulio. I really appreciate the comment you made about the cost of sales and that becoming part of the analysis. Now, the question is, when a company is maturing in the partner ecosystem, as well as moving from growth phase to profitability, how do you balance out, what thoughts, I would love to hear the panel's perspective on, what are the thoughts on how do you balance that from a profitability that costs us sales, but then knowing that to be part of an ecosystem, there's a lot of pieces that need to be connected, and incentivizing the partners the right way, and incentivizing your sellers, and transforming those comp models to actually make sense and make this really sticky. So I'd love the perspective there.
This is, I think, goes back to Bob's comment about data and attribution and how important it is to there's two people who should be your best friends. The CFO. The CFO should be your best friend because the CFO understands channel economics and the volume play, and especially in areas where you cannot grow very well or efficiently. And then the other is your RevOps person. So your RevOps person really needs to be able to do the analysis on what are the growth areas that will continue to kind of will feed a little bit more and be a little less efficient, but what are the core areas where it is about, we will really want to kind of over-index a bit more on the EBITDA side, and that is where we want to get a little sharper in how we incent our partners as well as our overlay, and our direct sellers, right? So there's a lot of analysis there that needs, those two people, though, need to be your best friends.
And I'm going to go to one more question since we have a short amount of time left, and I want to give you each one last word of wisdom to this lovely group. So please.
Thanks. Hi. 1 second of backstory. The company that I work for actually didn't exist a year ago. It's literally the outcome of an investment made by an investing group. So I kind of describe it as the 5 lions of Voltron, but they're all misshapen, and some are big and some are small, and there are 2 people that think they're the head and only 1 foot and all of that. So
many questions.
yeah, it's really fun. Actually, it's great. But the truth is I'm in the position right now of having a highly supportive senior and executive leadership team around bringing together what would be global alliances or ecosystem, kind of alliances in our company. But I mean, the list of job recs necessary to do that infrastructure beyond the cross-functional motions are like, I just wrote down like 4 more jobs today that we need to hire. So from an investing standpoint, what are the things that I need to be thinking about that we can bring to our leadership teams and our board and saying, what's the language that unlocks investment in just infrastructure that isn't necessarily going to be attached immediately to annual contract value? And what's the language that unlocks investment in things like our APIs so that we can start getting to sticky kind of attachment of integrations and applications?
One person can take that.
I'm happy to just say, I think the really hard part about this is like, it comes down to building a business case, which is generally trying to tie those things back to a revenue figure when in reality you don't know what it's actually going to be able to create. But I think it's painting a picture of what it could be. And I do think separately, I think you showing a picture of what that org chart might look like 18 months down the road, but like, here's what I can do with 2 people now, and these generalists who are going to fill a lot of roles and then are going to move into these more specialist roles over time helps show that you have like a vision of how to get there too.
Guys, we're a little bit over, so I'm just going to say everybody gets just a few word answer that you would give advice back to these folks that they can take home to their teams during these challenging but still feel like we're all gonna be okay, and we all got each other here, we're all gonna be okay. What would each of your answers to that little piece of advice be?
So mine is just about focus and alignment with the go-to-market strategy, making sure that what you're working on aligns to where the company's trying to grow.
You?
I just say follow the data. You can't answer a lot of these questions and solve a lot of these problems until you break those silos down. And probably, getting efficient, scalable account mapping going is step 0 for everything we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I'm going to double down on actually both of those, which is go back to like your RevOps person. I think often partnerships gets kind of like left out or like stepchild of sales and marketing, and figuring out how to make sure that person is supporting you and you aren't producing your own data actually brings it all together much faster.
Alison will tell you that your best friend is your CFO. All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.